Before we get started with today's video, I have an announcement to make. After years of telling other people's stories, I finally released one of my own. My novel Eternal Reign is available now in both ebook and paperback format for those of you who are like me and prefer to collect physical media. You can grab a copy right now on Amazon through the link in the description of this video. And now back to our regularly scheduled program. In the land of Evilis, there's a scholar named Alislam who's been studying the history of the land around a time known as the Lion War. The people say the war divided the land in two, as two sides fought to determine who would become the new king, but it all got sorted out by a lone hero named Delita. That's the official story, but Alislam isn't sure that's the truth. He believes the true hero of the Lion War was Ramza, the youngest son of the Beowulf noble house, who for reasons unknown was scrubbed from history. Recently, the derived papers that had been sealed away by the church were released, and they say it was Ramza who really put an end to the war, despite the fact that the church has him labeled as a blasphemer and one of the most evil men to ever walk the planet. Al-Islam wants to know the truth, so he dives into the derived papers to learn the true story of the Lion War. A year after the end of the 50-year war, the king died of an illness, and his successor was only 2 years old. He's obviously too young to rule, so his guardian will be the one to take over for him. The queen's older brother Lard got the job, but the parliament figured that the queen would use her brother as a means of ruling herself, so they blocked his appointment to the role of the king's guardian and instead gave the job to the king's cousin Galtana. Both Larg and Galtana are highly decorated generals from the 50-year war, but they had support from two different groups of people. Galtana had the support of the high-ranking nobles, but the disenfranchised nobles and soldiers preferred Larg. Galtana's symbol is the black lion, while Larg's symbol is the white, and the fight between the two of them over the throne will eventually be known as the Lion War. Over at the Orban Monastery, Agrius Oaks has hired a group of mercenaries led by a man named Gafgarian to help protect Princess Ovelia when she leaves the place. One of these mercenaries is Ramza, the main character of this story, but before they can get their journey started, an injured knight comes stumbling in saying that Prince Galtana's men are there. Agrius and her knights head out to deal with them, and even though Ramza stopped being a knight a long time ago, he heads out to help them. Gafgarian joins in too, but he plans on asking for more money for the work. Galtana's men are there to kidnap the princess, so Ramza and the others do the one thing that they can in that situation, and that's put them all down. Unfortunately, while they're fighting at the front, a knight sneaks around the back, knocks the princess unconscious, tosses her on a chocobo, and rides off before Agrius can stop him. The knight who snatched her was Delita, Ramza's friend from a long time ago who he thought was dead. Since Ramza knows the man who took Ovelia, Agrius wants to know all that she can about him so it will be a little bit easier to track him down. So Ramza tells her a very long story. When Ramza was younger, he and his best friend Delita were both knight cadets. The world had been at war for 50 years, and after it ended, the soldiers who came home didn't have jobs or money, and because of that, they didn't really have any loyalty to the ruling class. A lot of them became thieves and started plotting a rebellion against the royal family. Evilis stopped being a safe place to be, which meant every night, even the cadets were forced to deal with criminals. At the academy, all of the cadets get called into a meeting, and Delita is pretty sure something big is about to happen since both Prince Larg and Marquis Elmdor of Limberry are coming to town for some reason. The Hokuda Knights are on high alert since everywhere is pretty dangerous, but they don't have enough troops to deal with everything, which is why Delita is pretty sure that he and Ramza and the rest of the cadets are about to get a mission. Sure enough, their commander comes in saying just that. The Death Corp has it out for the royal family, so the cadets have been ordered to hunt them down and deal with them. Prince Larg's knights are at Egros Castle not too far away from the academy, so they'll be helping too, as well as anyone else that can be spared. The main job of Ramza and the other rookies is to get to Egros Castle and help guard it from the attack that is likely going to happen. But first, there are some thieves that have been seen sneaking into town, and the cadets are sent out to get rid of them. Once the thieves have been dealt with, Ramza, Delita, and the other cadets make their way to Egros. On the way there, they see a man named Algus being attacked by some members of the Death Corp, who are trying to find information on Marquis Elmdor. Since they're supposed to be dealing with the Death Corp anyway, Ramza and his group save Algus by putting them down. Algus is a knight cadet from Limberry, and when he realizes that Ramza is a part of the Beowulf family, he gets excited because Ramza's family is one of the most powerful noble houses around, and they will have the resources to help him save the Marquis. The man's been kidnapped by the Death Corp, and Algus thinks they're gonna kill him. Delita highly doubts that the Death Corp kidnapped such a high-ranking noble just to kill him. Even if they were, there isn't a whole lot that Ramza can do about it anyway. So instead of running off blindly, they head to Egros Castle to get their new orders. Ramza's brother Dycedarg is in charge of Egros, and he's already heard about the kidnapping. He has Ramza's other brother Zalbag leading a search party to hunt the man down, and he's pretty sure that if they haven't already killed Elmdor, the Death Corp will be sending out some ransom demands soon. Algus wants Dycedarg to give him some soldiers so he can get revenge on the Death Corp for killing his friends, but there's no way anyone would give a low-ranking soldier an army to lead, so instead Dycedarg assigns them all to guard Egros. He doesn't think the fighting will reach the castle, but you never know. Algus isn't happy with the assignment, but there's nothing he can do about it. In the old days, his family had as much pull as the Beowulfs, but his grandpa got captured during the 50-year war and sold his friends out to save himself. Nobody looks highly on people who do that, so nobody batted an eye when a rookie soldier stabbed him in the back. One of his grandpa's friends escaped captivity and told everyone about it, which caused his family to lose all of their political clout. Hanging around the castle is boring, but it does give Ramza's sister Alma a chance to see him. Tata, Delita's sister, is there too, so she finally gets to catch up with her brother. She and Alma are in school together, but even though she tries to hide it from Delita, since she's not nobly born, they don't exactly treat her well. Zeklaus is still around the castle too, but before he heads off to continue his duties, he lets Ramza and the others know that the Death Corp have demanded a ransom for Elmdor. The whole thing doesn't make sense to him because the Death Corp seems to have bigger goals than just kidnapping nobles for money. He sent a spy out to watch some members of their group, but he hasn't come back yet. Zeklaus is pretty sure he's in trouble, but the higher-up nobles don't think there's any reason to search for him. He'd been sent to the trade city of Dorda to the east, and while he wants to send some people out after him, he can't officially go against orders. But since it's not like Ramza and the cadets are doing anything productive around the castle, he indirectly sends them to Dorda to look for his missing man. When they reach the city, they see Wiegraf, the leader of the Death Corp, brutally interrogating one of his own men. He apparently had no idea that one of his underlings, a man named Gustav, had kidnapped the Marquis, and he wants to know where he took him. When the guy realizes that Wiegraf is going to kill him, he spills the beans. Wiegraf was going to kill the man anyway for what he did, but when Ramza and the others spot him, he decides to leave before he gets captured. There are a few more members of the Death Corp there that Ramza's crew puts down, but they do capture the same guy that Wiegraf had questioned. Algus interrogates him in a much more brutal way than Wiegraf had, since he's not all that fond of commoners. The Death Corp members do have a legitimate grievance though. They fought in the 50-year war, but once it was over, they were left to fend for themselves, all because they weren't nobly born. Delita can sympathize since he's not a noble either, but none of them can really agree with kidnapping people regardless of the situation. If the Death Corp is okay with that, then they kind of lose the moral argument. That's why Wiegraf never agreed to snatch Elmdor. Gustav is one of Wiegraf's top-ranking officers, and he had a different idea about how things should be run, and Wiegraf's gone to deal with him. He's hiding in the desert to the north of Dorda, and he probably has the Marquis with him, so Ramza and the others head off to save him. They fight their way inside of the hideout right as Wiegraf kills Gustav for what he did. Wiegraf is perfectly fine with them taking the Marquis back to Egros if they let him leave without a fight. Algus doesn't want to, but Ramza and Delita are pretty sure that even if they can beat Wiegraf, he will likely make sure the Marquis dies in the fight, so they let him go and take Elmdor back to Egros Castle, where they will very likely get in trouble for disobeying orders, despite the fact that their mission was a success. Ramza's brother was not happy about the fact that Ramza and Delita went after Elmdor against his orders. Having his own family members disobey orders is not something that helps with keeping the regular soldiers respecting the chain of command. Dycedarg's not all that willing to forgive Ramza's insubordination either, but since his actions helped save Elmdor, Prince Larg is willing to let it go. The mission of dealing with the Death Corp is nearly finished, and since Ramza seems dead set on putting himself in the forefront of it one way or another, Dycedarg decides to let him, Delita, and Algus join one of the more important tasks. They found a few places where Death Corp members are hiding, and Dycedarg is willing to let Ramza's group choose which one of them to attack. They head off to do just that while Dycedarg and Larg talk about why he was really upset about Ramza's interference. Gustav was one of Larg's men, so Dycedarg thought he'd be upset over Ramza messing up one of his plans, but it turned out better than what Larg had originally wanted. He had been trying to get Elmdor's people to work with him, and having Dycedarg's brother rescue the man should work wonders for having him get brought over to his side. Dycedarg is pretty sure the king will be dead soon, so they need to get their plans organized fast so they can capitalize on what will happen when the king croaks. Ramza's group just so happens to attack the base where Maluda, Wiegraf's sister, is held up. She tries to explain that the Death Corp just wants the nobles to stop treating them like animals, but Algus makes it pretty clear that he sees the poor as nothing more than trash, and they don't deserve equal treatment. The guy is a total prick, but neither Ramza nor Delita agree with his way of thinking, and they let Maluda go. While they were out, the Death Corp launches an attack on Egros. They injure Dycedarg pretty badly and kidnap Delita's sister. They tried to snatch Alma too, but Zeklaus managed to save her before she could get taken. When Delita hears about what happened to his sister, he does not take it well, but Dycedarg makes it clear that when Zalbag finds the place where the Death Corp is held up, they won't attack it until they get Taita back. Algus is pretty sure that Dycedarg is lying, since no one with any sense would waste troops trying to save a commoner. That rightfully makes Delita punch him in the face. Algus doesn't really care if what he said made a commoner mad, since no matter how Delita feels about it, he'll never be the same as Ramza. The two can play at being friends all they want, but the difference in class makes that impossible. Ramza doesn't agree, and he tells Algus to leave before he decides to put hands on the man too. He does leave, but not before he lets Ramza know that his brothers have found the Death Corp's base. It's at a place called Fort Zekten, and they're getting ready to attack it. Going at the place from the front is a good way to die, so he suggests that Ramza attacks it from the rear if he wants to save the little commoner girl. Ramza tells Delita where Taita likely is, and the two of them grab their squad and head off to rescue her. On the way there, they run into Maluta and some of her people while they're trying to escape. Delita wants her to tell him where Wiegraf took his sister just in case he didn't take her to the fort, and she assumes that Taita was a part of the Beol family. When she finds out that she's not, it doesn't change the fact that she was hanging around with the nobles who have oppressed them, so she refuses to tell Delita where her brother went, and she refuses to stop fighting until they kill her. At one of the Death Corp's safe houses nearby, Wiegraf confronts the guy who kidnapped Taita because he wants to know why he's abducting people. Golagros claims that he took her as a hostage so he could escape Egros, but if that were true, Wiegraf wants to know why he hasn't let the girl go yet. It's starting to seem like Gustav 2.0, which means Wiegraf is about to kill another one of his men who have gone rogue, but Golagros points out that they've lost most of their men, and they're surrounded by Hokutan knights. Keeping the Beowulf girl may be their only way to escape. Escaping doesn't matter to Wiegraf since he knows that they'll be caught and executed eventually. They just have to do as much damage as they can and drag as many of their enemies along with them to the grave. That way their children can have a better life, and he's pretty sure that there are survivors at Fort Zekten that can help them get back on the offensive. A messenger comes in letting him know that his sister has gotten killed, and the people who did it will be there soon. So he tells Golagros and the others to leave Taita there and head to Fort Zekten. That way they can get their defenses ready while he delays the invaders. Golagros leaves, but he takes Taita with him as insurance. Wiegraf is surprised that some cadets managed to kill his sister, but regardless he has to kill them to avenge her. He does think it's kind of funny that Golagros kidnapped the wrong girl, but he makes it clear that if they want the girl back, they'll have to beat him. He's surprised that he can't overpower a group of cadets, but he refuses to die there. Before he leaves, he lets Ramza know that Dycedarg had Gustav kidnap the Marquis, and it's likely Zalbag knew about it. Ramza doesn't believe it, but both Larg and Goltana are fighting to get support for their claim to the throne, so the easiest way to get it is to remove the people in power and replace them with people you can control. Dycedarg tricked Gustav into kidnapping the Marquis, and they were probably going to kill him if Ramza hadn't interfered. Ramza still doesn't believe him, but Wiegraf is pretty sure he'll see the truth about his brothers eventually. Delita doesn't care about any of that political stuff, he just wants his sister back, but unfortunately Golagros didn't listen to Wiegraf and he took Taita with him, which means they have to go to Fort Zekten. When they get there, Zalbag and his troops are already there with Algus. Golagros has Taita and is trying to use her to make Zalbag and the others leave him alone. That and the fact that the fort is full of enough explosive powder to turn them and the entire building to ash. Proving that what Algus said about Ramza's brothers was true, Zalbag tells Algus to shoot Taita so he can kill Golagros. Algus is completely okay with shooting the woman right in front of her brother. Golagros manages to crawl into the fort to keep from getting shot again, and after news comes that Wiegraf and about 50 soldiers have been spotted nearby, Zalbag leaves Algus to finish taking care of the fort as well as dealing with Ramza and Delita. Delita and Ramza do the world a favor and kill Algus, but while Delita is checking on Taita to see if she's still alive, Golagros lights the powder that's in the fort and causes it to explode. Ramza gets separated from Delita and his sister by the explosions, and since there's nothing he can do, he runs away. After hearing the story, Agrius is ready to go after Delita since she wouldn't be able to face the royal family if she failed to protect the princess. And even though Gafgarian refuses to help hunt for Ovelia since he hasn't been paid to do that, Ramza agrees to go so he can find out how Delita survived the explosion and why he kidnapped the princess in the first place. The people who ordered Ovelia's kidnapping were expecting people to come after her, so they paid some less than reputable folks to make sure that Ramza and the others didn't chase them for long. When the mercenaries see that Gafgarian is a part of the group, they realize that they should have asked for way more money since he's apparently famous for being dangerous. Once they've all been dealt with, Agrius figures that the only place the kidnappers could be taking Ovelia is to Bethla Garrison, so that's where the group starts to head. They don't end up having to go that far because they find Delita and Ovelia at a waterfall surrounded by Hokutan knights. They claim that they'll let Delita live if he turns the princess over to them, but he's pretty sure that they'll kill both him and Ovelia if he does that, so he refuses. They claim that he's lying, but once Ovelia sees Agrius, they decide to stop wasting time with the lies and reveal that Gafgarian has been working with them all along. Their job was to kidnap the princess and kill everyone who saw them do it. They want her out of the way because she's the rightful heir to the throne and a hindrance to Larg getting the seat. Delita taking her before they could do their job was an unexpected problem, since they were planning on blaming her death on Goltana. Delita's pretty sure that Ramza's brother Dycedarg had something to do with making this plan, since he's still working with Larg. Gafgarian assumed that Ramza would go along with him, but he clearly guessed wrong because Ramza teams up with Delita to deal with Gafgarian and his knights, which forces the mercenary to retreat since dying's not at the top of his priority list. When the battle's done, Delita tries to convince Ramza and Agrius to leave the princess with him since she'll be safer. Now that they've made an enemy of the Hokutan, they will be hunting Ramza's group non-stop, and it's only a matter of time before they catch them and kill them all. Since it was Larg's plan, the royal family is clearly not on Ramza's side, and Goltana will probably execute Ramza's group just to avoid making it look like he really did go after the princess. So they don't have many safe places to go. Delita claims that he does, but he can't tell Ramza how or what he's working on. He's not looking to fight Ramza right now though, so he agrees to let him keep the princess for now. Agrius is grateful for Ramza's help since he's basically just made himself the enemy of one of the most powerful men in Ivalice. And while what Delita said about not having any allies is mostly true, Agrius thinks that they can ask Cardinal Draclaw for help. The Globados Church has a lot of authority, even enough to make Prince Larg not want to make an enemy out of them, so heading to Lionel Castle and talking to the Cardinal may be their best chance to avoid death. On the way there, they pass through a city where a man named Mustadio is being chased by some shady-looking people. They want something that he has, and their leader, a man named Rudvik, has kidnapped Mustadio's father as a means of guaranteeing that he hands it over. He's pretty sure that the man will kill both of them once he gets what he wants, so he's not exactly willing to hand it over. Lucky for him, Ramza and his friends see him and decide to help him out by murdering Rudvik's men. Mustadio thanks Agrius and Ramza for their help and lets them know that the men they killed were from the Bart Company. They're known around Ivalice as importers of goods, but they're really a very big crime syndicate that dabbles in everything from smuggling to slave trading. They're all around bad people, so he doesn't think Ramza should lose any sleep over the ones he killed. Mustadio is a mechanic, one of the people who study the lost civilization that's supposed to exist under Gaug the Machine City. Back in the days of Saint Ajora, technology was more advanced than in the present day. There were flying airships and human robots that walked around the town performing jobs that regular people didn't want to do. As time passed, the technology was lost, and most people stopped believing that it existed at all, except for the people who actually explored Gaug and have seen the broken machines and airships that are buried under the city. The mechanics are working to restore that old technology. That's where Mustadio got his gun from. It shoots out regular gunpowder-fueled bullets, but from what he's heard, there are some that can actually be loaded with magic. That's not why the Bart Company are after him, but he doesn't feel comfortable telling Ramza the particulars of what he found just yet. He did hear that Ramza was going to see the Cardinal and he wants to tag along. Draclaw was a hero in the 50-Year War, and a lot of people respect him. That means he could probably make the Bart Company release Mustadio's dad, but he'd never meet with some random mechanic. If Ramza lets him tag along, he may get to ask the man for help. Agrius doesn't want to bring him since he won't say why he's being hunted, but Ovelia decides to let him tag along anyway. So with their new member in tow, they get back on the road to Lionel Castle. While Ramza and the others are making their way to the Cardinal, over at Egros Castle, Dycedarg is giving Gafgarian the go-ahead to do whatever it takes to get Ovelia, and kill everyone else who's blocking that goal, including his own brother. Gafgarian isn't all that fond of fighting the church if they decide to defend the princess, but Dycedarg has a plan if it comes to that. It turns out that Dycedarg had hired some other people to kidnap the princess at Orban Monastery, but Delita had killed them and took her himself. Not even Dycedarg knows who he's working for, but it's clear that they're trying to stop his plans. That's not important at the moment. All that matters is getting Ovelia, so he sends Gafgarian off to get back on the hunt. When Ramza and the others make it to the Cardinal and tell him their story, he immediately agrees to help expose Prince Larg's plan and keep the princess safe, and he's willing to let Agrius and Ovelia stay in the castle until everything's been taken care of. He's even willing to send troops to Gaug to deal with the Bart Company for Mustadio, but he does want to know why they're after him and his father. Mustadio says that he can't tell him, but the Cardinal is pretty sure that he already knows. Mustadio and his father must have found one of the holy stones while they were sifting through the wreckage of Gaug. Draclaw knows this because he has one of the stones too. The stones are a part of an old religious tale called the Zodiac Brave story that may or may not be true. A long time ago, 12 warriors fought against the Lucavi, who were very powerful demons that ruled the world. The 12 managed to seal the Lucavi away in another dimension, freeing the world from their control. Each warrior carried a crystal with a zodiac sign carved into it, and that made people start calling them the Zodiac Braves. Their leader was a man named Saint Ajora, and according to the legend, every time the world is in danger, the Braves and Ajora show up and save it. The Zodiac crystals are called the Holy Stones by the church, and the one that the Cardinal has is one of the stones that were used by the actual Braves of the stories. The stones are supposed to hold power greater than the Lucavi wielded, which is why anyone who knows about them would do anything to get their hands on one. Since the Cardinal already knew the truth, Mustadio admits that he did find one under Gaug, and every time it gets around the broken machines, they start to make noise like they're coming alive. Rudvik wants the stone so he can use it to make weapons, and since the last thing the group of criminals needs are stronger weapons, Mustadio's father told him to never give them the stone. So they kidnapped him to try and force Mustadio to hand it over anyway. Dracula promises that his men will save Mustadio's father, and since the princess is safe, Ramza decides to go to Gaug with him to help Mustadio save his dad, and to keep a crazy man from getting his hands on a rock that has the power of a god. When Mustadio and Ramza get to Gaug, it is pretty clear that something is wrong. There are no members of the Bark Company anywhere, but it doesn't look like there's been a fight, which it would have been if the Cardinal soldiers had shown up like they were supposed to. Mustadio decides to look around for his father, and tells Ramza where to meet up with him a little bit later. It takes a while, but Mustadio finally shows up, but he doesn't show up to the meeting spot alone. Rudvik and some of his men captured him and brought him and his father there to force him to tell them where the stone is. Since he doesn't really have a choice now, he tells them and Ramza gets it and hands it over. Now that he has the stone and he's pretty confident that Ramza and Mustadio are about to die, Rudvik lets slip that he was after the stone for Cardinal Draclaw before he leaves. After taking down his men and saving Mustadio's father, the mechanic reveals that the stone he gave to Rudvik was a fake, one that he made just in case he had to turn it over, and he still has the real one in his pocket. That's great for him, but since the Cardinal wasn't exactly being honest with them, Ramza is positive that Agrius and Ovelia are not safe with him. If he's hunting for the Zodiac stones, him and the church may very well be trying to use the stones in the legend of the Zodiac Braves to make the church into the new ruling body of Evilis, since the Lion War has made everything unstable, which means that Ovelia would be in just as much danger in the hands of the church as she would be if Galtana or Larg got her. Since they helped him out, Mustadio agrees to help Ramza save Ovelia and Agrius, but he's pretty sure they won't be able to take the same route back to Lionel Castle that they did before, since the Cardinal's men will likely be watching for Ramza, so they hop on a ship so they can try and sneak around the back of the castle. That turns out to be a good idea, because none of the Lionel soldiers are in the trade city that they passed through, but Delita just so happens to be there, and he warns Ramza that worrying about the princess and holy stones might not be all that good for his health. Things are about to get very dangerous, and the Lion War is the least important part of it. He knows a lot more than he's telling Ramza, obviously, but he leaves without telling him anything of substance. While Ramza is making his way back to Lionel Castle, Rudvik and Gafgarian have both made it to see the Cardinal. He's planning on handing the princess over to Dycedarg since he had already agreed to do just that, once he's let Gafgarian use her as bait to lead both Ramza and Mustadio into a trap so Gafgarian can kill them and take the stone. He heads off to set up the trap, but as for Rudvik, since he got tricked into turning over a fake stone, the Cardinal kills him. While racing back to the castle, Ramza runs right into Agrius, who's being chased by some knights from Lionel Castle. She had escaped after she heard that the Cardinal was working with Prince Larg, but the princess got captured again, and they're taking her to the Golgorand execution site at that very moment. So Agrius and Ramza finish off her attackers and rush over to the site to stop the princess from getting beheaded. Turns out the princess was never taken to the site at all, and this was the trap that Gafgarian had set up for Ramza. It doesn't work, and instead of dying, Gafgarian runs away again, so Ramza heads back to Lionel Castle. It turns out that Delita was working with the Cardinal, which is something Ovelia finds out when he's the one who brings her food to her prison. But she still doesn't know what him and his group want with her since they aren't taking her to Larg at all. Whatever they're planning, she'll have to go along with it if she doesn't want to die. Delita was actually going to explain part of the plan to her, but the Cardinal and one of the church's high-ranking knights named Vormov comes in and reveals that Ovelia isn't actually the original princess at all. The real princess died a long time ago, and some politicians who hadn't liked the original royals killed a few princes in a way that looked like natural causes, then had Ovelia get adopted as the new princess since they didn't think the king was healthy enough to have another son, something that they turned out to be very wrong about. Granted, not everyone is sure that Ornas is actually the old king's biological son. Larg may have pulled some strings to make the king think he'd had a baby with Larg's sister just so he could be in a position to take power. Ovelia doesn't believe him, but whether she was the real princess or not is irrelevant when it comes to the Cardinal and Vormov's plan. People think she's a legitimate heir to the throne, and they want to put her there under the control of the church, making them the new rulers of Ivalice instead of either Larg or Goltana. When Ramza and Agrius make it to the castle, Gafgarian attacks them again, and this time Ramza finally kills the man. With him out of the way, they head inside to face the Cardinal. The princess has already been sent to Zeltenia, and the Cardinal has no intention of letting Ramza go after her while he holds the Holy Stone, because he knows what they can really do, and he proves it by transforming himself into a Lucavi. Letting the demon use his body doesn't give it access to its full power, so Ramza and his group are able to kill the thing and add another Holy Stone to their collection. Over at Zeltenia, since Delita was the one who saved Ovelia from Larg, he gets to meet with Goltana and his most important allies. Delita claims to be one of Baron Grimm's Black Sheep Knights, but the Baron died a month ago in a battle that wiped out his entire Black Sheep squad. Delita is obviously lying, but since none of Goltana's allies knew every member of the squad, they don't have any way to confirm Delita's identity, and since he did bring the princess, they assume he's telling the truth. Delita also brought a prisoner from the group who had kidnapped the princess for Larg. The plan was to frame Goltana for the kidnapping to keep him from taking over Lasalia, and they set the plan up with one of Goltana's top men who wanted to join Larg. After making Delita promise to not let him get executed, the prisoner snitches on one of the men in that very room, and since treason is punishable by death, Delita cuts the man down. After what he's seen, Delita thinks Goltana should take his Nantan Knights to Lasalia right away before they blame him for what happened, which would turn more people against him. And instead of playing things slowly, they need to get rid of Oranos and the Queen and put Ovelia on the throne right away. Goltana takes his advice and heads to Lasalia with his army. They lock the queen away in Bethla Garrison and pronounce Ovelia the new ruler of Ivalice. However, Larg claims that Oranos is the rightful heir and crowns him king. But since he's so young, Larg acts as the true leader until Oranos is old enough to do the job himself. So acting on Oranos' behalf, Larg sends the Hokutan to Bethla Garrison to rescue the queen, and Goltana sends a large contingent of Nantan Knights to keep them out, which is where the Lion War officially begins. The Lion War has caused a lot of death on both sides, and even more people are injured. Food storages are low, and the drought has caused a lot of refugees to come to Lasalia, which is causing Larg a lot of problems. That's good for Goltana, but Orlando is pretty sure that it's only a matter of time before the same happens to them. He thinks it's about time that they start talking peace, but Goltana has no plans on doing that no matter how bad things get for the common people. Orlando is not happy about that, but there's nothing he can do about that since he's not in charge. While that's going on, Ramza is heading for Lasalia to let his brother Zalbag know that someone behind the scenes is manipulating everyone, and they're probably doing it for a very unpleasant reason. On the way to see his brother, Ramza runs into a man named Olan who accidentally wandered into a group of thieves' hideout, and he's in the process of getting murdered, so Ramza does his usual hero thing and saves him. When the fighting's done and Ramza introduces himself, Olan is surprised to hear that he's a Beowulf since most of that family are kinda dicks, but he's glad that he ran into the one that's not. He's not heading to Lasalia though, so he and Ramza go their separate ways, although Olan is pretty sure that they'll meet again. In Lasalia, Zalbag's not all that interested in Ramza's conspiracy theories, but he is surprised that Ramza thinks Dycedarg kidnapped the princess. The two of them start arguing, but they're interrupted when one of Zalbag's knights comes in claiming that Thunder God Sid and his troops have broken through the Dagula Pass. That's a pretty big deal since they didn't know his forces were anywhere near the pass, so Zalbag leaves Ramza to go and deal with this new problem, and Ramza decides to go ahead and leave the castle. He was planning on leaving without telling Alma, but she sees him trying to sneak out of the back, so he has to talk to his sister. She's surprised to hear that Delita is alive and helped kidnap the princess. Ramza had thought he was working for Goltana, but he thinks he's involved with a third party instead. Unlike Zalbag, Alma believes Ramza about Dycedarg, and since Ramza is fighting against him, she wants to go with him. His life isn't exactly easy, so he doesn't want to bring her along, but their discussion is cut short when Zalmo, a heretic hunter from the church, shows up. Ramza has been branded a heretic and is required to stand trial for killing the Cardinal and stealing the Holy Stones. Since their version of a trial is similar to the way they tried to get witches to confess in Salem, whether Ramza is found guilty or innocent, he'll still get executed, so Alma wants him to run. That makes Zalmo attack, but Ramza beats him, so he runs away. Ramza has no idea how the man found out about the Holy Stone, but he's pretty sure it has something to do with whoever Delita is working for. Alma has actually seen one of the Holy Stones herself, and she'll tell Ramza where it is if he agrees to take her with him. Since she's probably been labeled a heretic too since she helped fight off Zalmo, and he doesn't exactly trust Dycedarg to keep her safe, Ramza agrees to bring her. Since he agrees to bring her, she lets him know that she saw one of the stones at the Orban Monastery, so it's time to head back there to retrieve it. Alma wasn't the only person who had seen the stone at the monastery, because when she and Ramza get there, the place has already been attacked. A lot of the people are dead, and Simon, the old man who leads the monastery, is badly injured. He's still alive though, and he lets Ramza know that they've had the holy stone at the monastery since Princess Ovelia was brought there, as a sign of proof that she was a part of the royal family. The whole situation is so dangerous that he doesn't think Ramza should get involved, but he's already in way too deep to just run off and hide. The high priest and his people are trying to regain power by weakening both Larg and Goltana's military, as well as how the general public view the royal family. Once the people are tired of the fighting and desperate for a savior, the church will send out their Zodiac Braves to play the role of hero and get the people to follow the church. Ramza's gonna go and try to stop them from getting the Virgo stone, and he wants Alma to take care of Simon while he's gone. He leaves the 2 Zodiac stones with her just in case he doesn't make it out, before he heads deeper into the monastery. The church has sent a lot of people led by a man named Islud and another man that Ramza ran into a long time ago, Wiegraf. Islud thinks that Ramza should join them like Delita did since he's working against his brothers too, but he doesn't seem to know about the demonic power of the so-called Holy Stones, or that the Cardinal turned into a monster. Once it's been made clear that Ramza won't join him, and that Islud isn't strong enough to beat Ramza in a fight, he retreats and takes Alma with him as a hostage while leaving Wiegraf to deal with Ramza. The man wanted the chance to get revenge on Ramza for killing his sister anyway, so he's more than happy to do it. Unfortunately for him, Ramza is stronger than he is, and he wounds him so badly that he can't escape with Islud. While he's dying from his injuries, the Zodiac stone that he's holding starts to talk to him, and it offers him immortality if he gives it his body. Since he really didn't want to die, he agrees, and his body is merged with the demon Vilius. Ramza wants to fight him, but since Wiegraf only just got his new powers, he teleports away to learn more about what his new form can do before he finally kills Ramza. Simon comes crawling out of the building and he hands Ramza a book written by Germanic, one of Saint Ajora's disciples. The book had been lost, but Simon found it, and it explains the true history of the Zodiac Braves and proves that the church's religion is a crock of crap. He thinks Ramza can use the book to discredit the church and make them give his sister back, but he won't get to see it because he dies from his injuries. With the book in hand, Ramza heads off to try and track down Islud so he can hopefully save his sister. The church clearly knew that Ramza had gotten the Germanic scriptures, because as soon as he leaves the Orban monastery, a weird-looking wizard comes to him telling him to bring the book to the Rylvain's castle if he ever wants to see his sister alive again. Since he doesn't have much of a choice, he starts heading to the meeting site. The path to the castle isn't exactly clear since Ramza has a pretty big price on his head, and some soldiers have gotten tired of fighting in the Lion War, and they think that the reward for killing a heretic would make things easier for them. The problem is, killing Ramza isn't easy and the people who try end up dead. Just like he had promised, Olan runs into Ramza again, and it turns out that he's a part of Goltana's Nantan Knights. He's been sent out to hunt deserters, so he has no interest in fighting Ramza. Ramza's brother's men are a different story, however, and since they aren't that far away, Olan thinks that it's in Ramza's best interest to get away from there. Ramza agrees, but before he leaves, he tells Olan to let him know if he comes across the Nantan Knight Orlandu, since he was Ramza's dad's old friend, and may be more interested in making peace than the rest of the knights. As luck would have it, Orlandu is Olan's father-in-law, so he'll definitely see the man again, and if he finds out that the church is doing some heinous stuff, he'll be more than willing to turn his sword toward them. And since he's one of the deadliest warriors in Evilise, that would mean a lot. They think that the high priest is plotting something, but they don't have any proof. If it wasn't for the fact that Ramza needs the Germanic scriptures to save his sister, he would have told Olan about it, but since saving his sister is more important than stopping the war, he says his goodbyes to Olan and heads on. The strange wizard who had brought Ramza the message is named Malik, and he had never planned on letting Ramza reach the castle. He set up an ambush so he could kill the man and take the scriptures for his own master. His sister Rafa doesn't want to be used as a tool of murder anymore, and she wants her brother to escape with her. He feels more loyalty to their master since he saved them after their parents were killed during the 50-year war. But Rafa is pretty sure that Grand Duke Barrington took advantage of the war and used it as an excuse to burn their village and turn them into willing slaves, all because of their special magic. Malik doesn't believe her about that, so he's not going to turn on the man. With or without her brother, Rafa is done, and to prove it, she warns Ramza about the ambush and helps him force her brother to retreat. With her brother gone, Rafa gives Ramza a heads up about what he'll face when he goes after his sister, and who the man is that her brother is working for. Barrington wants to be king, and he's known for making weapons and training wizards, so he'll be very well defended. Malik sends Ramza a message by talking through a frog, which is a pretty cool power, and tells him to get to Rylvain's castle faster than gonna kill his sister, and if Rafa doesn't come with them, they'll still kill her. Since neither of them have a choice, they race off to the castle. When they get there, Barrington is meeting with Wiegraf and Vormov in an attempt to get them to work with him to overthrow both Larg and Goltana. The man is very well informed when it comes to the Zodiac Stones and the power that they hold. He also knows why Vormov is hunting Ramza. Vormov tries to play ignorant, but it turns out that Barrington learned the truth from Vormov's son Islud after he took the 2 stones from him that Islud took from Ramza's sister. Vormov isn't happy about that, but he's still not willing to work with Barrington. The man threatens to expose the church's corruption if they don't, and he'll use the Germanic scriptures to do it. Vormov doesn't take too kindly to threats, so he sends Wiegraf out to deal with Ramza, and he uses the Zodiac Stone's power to deal with everyone in the room. Barrington sees what's about to happen and he runs away while his men get slaughtered. Ramza and Rafa force Malik to retreat again, and this time Rafa chases after her brother to try and make him run away with her while Ramza heads into the castle to save Alma. The castle is in total chaos. Vormov and Wiegraf are wreaking so much havoc that one of the knights feels bad about leaving Alma locked in a cell with no means of escape, so he lets her out before he dies, giving her at least a small chance to live. While she's looking for a way out, Ramza comes face to face with Wiegraf, who seems to have a completely different personality after his resurrection. He doesn't even care about his sister's death anymore, and instead just wants to kill people and cause chaos. That doesn't change the fact that Ramza will have to go through him to save his sister, so the two fight and Ramza forces him to teleport away. He changes his mind mid-retreat and decides to turn into Velius to deal with Ramza once and for all. Despite having the power of a Lucavi, Wiegraf dies, letting Ramza collect another Zodiac Stone before he continues his hunt through the castle. Alma makes it to the room where Vormov had first started his attack, and she sees that he didn't even spare his son. Islud finally realizes that Ramza was right about the stones, just a little bit too late. But he gives Alma the stone that he has and tells her to make her brother warn everyone that if they don't stop fighting and work together against the new Zodiac Braves, everyone's gonna die. Alma takes the stone and heads off to do just that, but unfortunately for her, Vormov finds her first. He senses Wiegraf's death, which makes him realize just how dangerous Ramza really is. He gets ready to kill Alma, but his Virgo stone resonates with her, marking her as the person that he had been hunting for. So instead of killing her, he knocks her out and takes her with him, not noticing that Islud's stone fell out of her pocket when he grabbed her. Barrington had run to the roof of the castle to avoid getting murdered by Vormov, but Rafa followed him so she could finally get revenge on him for killing her parents. Unfortunately for her, she brought a knife to a gunfight, so the odds of her winning are pretty much zero. Barrington knows this, and like a typical movie villain, he gloats about how nothing will happen to him despite all of the things he's done to her and her family. Malik overhears him admitting to everything that Rafa had accused him of, so when he goes to shoot her, Malik pushes her out of the way and takes the hit himself. Ramza hears the commotion and comes to see what happened, but he can't exactly help while Barrington has a gun pointed at Rafa. Malik has the stones that they took from Alma in his pocket, so Barrington tells Rafa to bring them to him. Before she can comply, Marquis Elmdor and 2 very strong women show up and toss Barrington off the roof of the castle, before demanding that Rafa turn the stones over to them. Elmdor had supposedly died in a battle not so long ago, so Ramza is pretty sure that the man is as human as Wiegraf was in the end, which means giving him more Zodiac stones is not a good idea, so he attacks the Marquis instead, despite the fact that the man claims he'll make Vormov give Alma back if Ramza complies. After fighting with Ramza, the Marquis realizes why 2 of the Lucavi have lost to the man, and he decides to retreat so he can prepare to fight him on better terms at his own castle in Limbury. With the battle done and his sister still missing, Ramza gets ready to make his next move, but he stops when the Zodiac Stone Rafa has starts talking to her, in much the same way that Wiegraf's had. It senses how sad she is over her brother's death, and it activates bringing him back to life, which proves that the power in the stones isn't inherently bad. It all depends on the desires of the person using them. While leaving the castle, Ramza finds the stone that Alma dropped, and with Rafa and Malik both deciding to join him on his mission, he makes his way to Limbury Castle where he hopes to finally rescue his sister. After searching through all of the corpses in the castle and making sure that his sister wasn't one of them, Ramza learns from Malik that there were only 3 shrine knights from the church in the castle. Ramza killed Wiegraf, and Islud was dead, which means the 3rd knight probably took his sister. If he did, then he may have taken her to the holy city of Muron, since the shrine knights are following the high priest's orders. Even though the shrine knights are working for the priest, Ramza doubts he knows the true nature of the holy stones. Wiegraf hadn't known until Velius spoke to him, and Islud's body looked like he had been murdered by a Lucavi, so it's possible that only a handful of the church's followers understand what the stones are. That means there's a 4th group in the Lion War that's planning on using the Zodiac Brave story to dominate everyone, including the church, and Vormov may be the one running the show. With things getting more and more chaotic in the world, Ramza decides to head to Zeltinia to talk to Delita. He wants to find out if the man knows what Vormov is up to. On the way to Zeltinia, Ramza and his ever-growing army of allies are attacked by a woman who wants to get revenge on him because she thinks he killed her brother Islud, and she's not exactly willing to buy the story that her brother got killed when Vormov turned into a Lukavi, especially since Vormov is her dad, which is something that Ramza hadn't expected. Ramza forces the woman to run away, but not before she vows to add her name to the never-ending list of people who want to kill him for one reason or another. When the battle's done, Ramza meets up with Delita in a church, which is an odd place for a heretic to go, but the church is trying to kill him anyway, so it doesn't matter all that much. That doesn't mean he plans on making it easy for them, so instead of wasting time with small talk, he asks Delita why the high priest sent him to work for Goltana, and the man actually answers the question. He was sent there to kill both Orlando and Goltana. The church is trying to make the civilians who hate the government get angry enough to revolt, which will cause both Larg and Goltana to have to use their armies to stop the revolution. But between the deserters and the high body count of the war, they won't have enough soldiers to stop the civil unrest. Once they realize they only have one option left, they'll try to end the war by throwing all of their forces against each other in a final battle since neither side is willing to negotiate. The reason Delita was perfectly fine with telling Ramza all of that is because the plan is pretty much complete and the two armies are getting ready to head to Bethla Garrison for the final battle at that very moment. A battle where both Larg and Goltana will be assassinated, along with the leaders of each major knight faction, including Ramza's brothers. Without the army's leaders, the war will stop and the church will guide everyone into the next dynasty. According to the church, the one major obstacle they still have is Ramza himself. That would make Delita and Ramza enemies, except for the fact that he's not actually working for the church either, and according to him, he and Ramza are working toward the same goal. He proves that when Zalmo shows up to kill Ramza, and instead of joining in with the church's ally, he helps his old friend dispose of the heretic hunter for good. Once the fighting's over with, Ramza lets Delita know that the other reason he came to Zeltinia was to find Orlando to get his help in revealing the church's true motives. He has the proof Orlando and Olan need to expose everything, and since he doesn't need the Germanic scriptures to free his sister now, he's willing to use them against the church. One of Delita's assistants comes to let him know that Orlando and Goltana are both on their way to Bethla Garrison, and Goltana is bringing Delita's Black Sheep Knights with him. That means it's probably too late for Ramza to catch up to Orlando to try and stop the unnecessary fighting. But he's still going to try, so he heads off, and Delita lets him go because he knows what Ramza will do next, and it all falls in line with his own plans. While making his way to the garrison, Ramza runs into a shrine knight named Balk, who's put poison on the path of the Hokut Knights, a poison that'll make any soldier that breathes it in too sick to fight, which will give the Nanton Knights the upper hand when they get to the garrison. They'll take control of the fortress, making it easier for the assassins they have waiting there to finish off Goltana and Orlando. Since Ramza doesn't want the war to end like that, he kills Balk and moves on. He may not be fast enough though, because the plan to make Goltana and Orlando easier targets has already been put into motion. Someone planted some evidence to make it look like Orlando was plotting to overthrow Goltana himself. The high priest delivered the evidence to Goltana personally, and even though Orlando has worked for the man for 2 decades, he still has him arrested. Since he can't go to war without Orlando's soldiers, Goltana puts Delita in charge of them and gives him the title of Holy Knight while having no clue about how big of a mistake he's actually making. When Ramza gets to the garrison and asks to see Orlando, the guards assume that him and his crew are the assassins who've been hired to kill Goltana, so they try to arrest them and end up dead. The armies are getting ready to collide, so Ramza rushes off to see what he can do, but on Larg's side, things have already gone bad. Balk's poison has crippled the prince and a lot of his knights, so Dycedarg takes the opportunity to kill the man. Zalbag is confused by the betrayal, but Dycedarg has been working with some people who prefer to have the Baol family in charge, and the only way they could do that is to have Larg removed while making it look like one of Goltana's assassins killed him. Since he can't exactly turn on his own brother, Zalbag agrees to help him pin the murder on Goltana. While all of this is going on, Ramza decides that the only way to interrupt the battle is to flood the field. So he kills the people guarding the dam, opens the floodgates, and uses the distraction to join up with Olan and rescue Orlando from prison. The woman who had been working with Delita helps, and since Goltana is planning on executing Orlando in a day, he doesn't have a choice but to go with Ramza to deal with the high priest. Olan wants to come with him, but Orlando sends him to Zeltinia so he can protect Ovelia. She's the rightful heir to the throne, and he wants to make sure that she lives to take it. Olan agrees and they all leave to carry out their mission. Delita carries out his own and kills Goltana, as well as a fake Orlando so the church will think that he's dead and hopefully won't be prepared for what he and Ramza do next. Things didn't work out as well as the high priest had hoped anyway, because the deaths of both Larg and Goltana weren't enough to make the armies give him authority, and the Lion War continues, despite the fact that the 2 lions who started it are both dead. Dycedarg doesn't plan on stopping the war until King Ornos is recognized as the rightful ruler of Ivalice, but what he didn't realize was that the church knew that he was the one who killed Larg. He thinks that he's in a position where he can beat the church with pure numbers, but the Shrine Knight Raphael doesn't think the man realizes just how much they know about the moves he's made to get into his current position. He had started his whole campaign by poisoning his father so he could take over the Beol family, which is not something that will go over well with most of his people, especially not with Zalbag. Raphael wasn't just sent to blackmail Dycedarg though. He brought him a holy stone as a gift to buy his cooperation, since his loyalties are clearly for sale. He accepts the gift, but Zalbag heard the entire exchange, and he leaves to go and find out if his brother really did kill their father. While Zalbag's trying to figure out just how crazy his brother really is, Ramza makes it to Limberry Castle where he hopes to find his sister. But as soon as he gets there, he gets the same feeling that he had when he fought the last two Zodiac monsters. That's when Elmdor's two super strong female bodyguards show up and attack. They're just there to stall him while Elmdor and Vormov, who have both fully given their bodies to the Lucavi, discuss their plan to give themselves the ability to enter the mortal world without needing a host body. That involves bringing back a Lucavi known as the Bloody Angel. That creature can only be brought back in a very specific body in a very specific location. The body they needed is Ramza's sister, which they have, but they have to bring her to a place called Moron Death City, and they still haven't found a way to get there yet. Elmdor's people can only delay Ramza for a little while, but once he makes it into the castle, Elmdor sends Vormov off to find a way into the city, while he goes to deal with Ramza himself. He realizes really fast that he can't beat Ramza while he's keeping his human form, so he teleports to the underground cemetery where he transforms and uses his power to resurrect the dead. Islud's sister comes in right when he changes, which proves to her that what Ramza said about the stones was true, and Elmdor lets her know that her father is a Lucavi too, because unlike her and her brother, Vormov's body was a viable vessel for them. Now that she knows that Ramza wasn't lying, she joins him in bringing down Elmdor and adding another Zodiac stone to his collection. The Lucavi from the legends were supposed to be immortal, super powerful creatures, but since Ramza's managed to kill 3 of them and they haven't just used their power to crush everyone, it makes it seem like the stories have exaggerated a little bit, or the Lucavi can't use their full power for some reason. Islud's sister decides to give Ramza the Zodiac stone that she had under the condition that he brings her with him, because she wants to know what her father is up to and why he gave Dycedarg a stone. Ramza had no idea his brother had a stone, but now that he does, he wants to find out why too, so he gets ready to head off to find him. Following his stepfather's orders, Olan gets to Ovelia, but not without taking some pretty bad injuries in the process. Orlandu had been blamed for Gotana's death, so Olan tells her everything that happened in Bethla Garrison. He was about to let her know that Delita had killed Gotana, but Delita comes in and admits it himself. Ovelia isn't exactly happy about that, since she's starting to think that he's not really trying to clear the path for her to get the throne. But she does trust him a little bit, just not enough to avoid eavesdropping on his conversation with Olan. Delita plans on wiping out the Hokutan and killing the High Priest to clear the path for Ovelia to become queen, while getting rid of all of the people who have corrupted the world. Olan thinks he's crazy to try something so extreme, but the High Priest had expected something like that from him. So he told the woman who had been working with Delita to kill him if he ever looked like he was going to turn on them. Unfortunately for her, Delita kills her first. Zalbag's investigation proves that his brother had in fact killed their father with the same poison that had been used on Larg's army, so he heads to Egro's castle to confront his brother. Ramza gets there in time to see Zalbag attack Dycedarg for what he's done, but before he can kill him, Dycedarg's knights show up to capture Zalbag. Ramza backs him up and they kill Dycedarg, but when he dies, the Zodiac Stone resurrects him as a Lucavi, and he kills Zalbag before Ramza puts him down. With the battle over, the last of the pure-blood sons of the Beol family are gone, pretty much putting an end to the family's power and influence. Ramza's not exactly sad about that. All he cares about now is saving his sister. Delita likely won't have to kill the High Priest to complete his plan himself, because Vormov, Raphael, and Balk, who managed to survive his fight with Ramza, go and stab the priest themselves. They only work with him to get the Holy Stones, but since Ramza has most of them, there's no point in working with the man anymore. They agree to not finish him off if he tells them where the entrance to Morond is. Since he doesn't want to die, he lets them know that the Holy City's entrance is at the bottom of Orban Monastery, blocked off by a magical seal. He doesn't know how to break the seal, but he thinks the spell is in the Germanic scriptures, which means Vormov once again has a reason to hunt for Ramza. The High Priest told them what they wanted, but instead of keeping their word, they stab him in the back, literally, before they leave. Since Alma wasn't at Limberry, Ramza decides that the only other place that Vormov could have brought her was the Moron Temple, which is the home of the High Priest. He can't exactly walk in there since they want to kill him, so he fights his way inside and finally comes face to face with Vormov, who wants the Germanic scriptures in exchange for Ramza's sister. He hands it over, and once Rafael sees that the spell he needs is inside, they attack Ramza. They realize pretty fast that they can't beat him, so they run away after Vormov summons Zalbag's soul, forcing Ramza to fight his dead brother while Vormov and the others head off to open the way to the city of the dead. The High Priest isn't fully dead when Ramza stumbles across him, and before he dies, he tells Ramza where Vormov and the others went, so it's back to Orban Monastery, the place where this entire thing all began. Ramza gets there while Rafael is in the process of opening the way to the city of the dead. Ramza beats him, but he doesn't stop him from completing the spell and teleporting them all to Morond. He dies from his wounds, but not before he destroys the entrance to the place, making it almost impossible for Ramza to ever make it home. He'll cross that bridge when he gets to it. Alma is somewhere in the city, so he heads off to find her. After cutting his way through Shrine Knights and the monsters that they have working with them, Ramza finds Vormov while he's trying to draw the strongest Lucavi, Altima, into Alma's body. It's not working though. It takes a lot of blood and death to resurrect Altima, which is the whole reason Vormov and the other Lucavi were trying to throw the world into chaos. He thought enough people had died for the summoning to work, but since that doesn't seem to be the case, he transforms into his Lucavi form and tries to kill Ramza. When he loses the fight, he sacrifices himself to complete the ritual, letting Altima take over Alma's body. The merger isn't complete though, so the Virgo stone that Alma was holding helps separate her from the Lucavi. Altima still has enough power to survive without a host, but not enough to beat Ramza, who she recognizes as a descendant of the person who beat her the last time. In a last-ditch effort to take down her enemies, she blows herself up and seemingly takes Ramza, his sister, and everyone else with her. With all of Ivalice's major powers gone, Delita marries Ovelia and becomes king and brings peace to Ivalice, but Ovelia thinks that he plans on killing her too, so she stabs him. He doesn't die, but he does kill her for attacking him. Meanwhile, Olan catches sight of Ramza and Alma, who survive the fight with Altima, and head off to start new lives somewhere else while the rest of Ivalice thinks they're dead. This concludes the story of Final Fantasy Tactics. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, comment, share, and subscribe. Grab a copy of my novel on your way out, and I'll see you all next time.